Welcome to another episode of the I Know a Guy podcast. On this episode, it's part 2 of 2, where we go out to Yellowstone National Park with some friends and take the cameras with us and the equipment and check out what it's like out west, a place I've never been. And so in part 1, hopefully you watched that. If you didn't, it's a great start and kind of highlights what we're going to be doing on the trip ahead of us. And part 2 is, well, the trip's now over. We've done 7 days, and we are gather on the back porch of a cabin in South Dakota and kind of just relive the memories we had over the past 6 or 7 days. My quest to become a cowboy, all the wonderful experiences, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the I Know a Guy podcast. All right, I'm clapping and we'll start.
Okay.
We'll go right into it and follow my lead, okay? No, I clap, Pappy.
Oh, I don't clap. Okay.
No, I clap. We don't have a studio audience here. Oh, 7 days, long time, huh?
No, it's been great.
Well, we started at Lava Mountain Lodge last Thursday.
Yeah.
Oh, last Friday morning, really, is when we ended up there. Felt like we traveled all night long. Got stuck at the Enterprise or whatever place it was and had to get a hotel for the night, but nonetheless.
Budget.
Yeah, it was a budget. It was a budget car rental.
Yeah.
So we've traveled the West. I told you guys when we started this thing that my goal was to become a cowboy. Think I've done it?
No. You're trying, you're working hard, but I hope it works out, but not yet.
What am I missing?
You just don't have your spurs on right.
What am I missing overall?
The knowledge of the animals would be the first thing.
Okay.
Yeah. You got to have knowledge of the animals. You got to have a knowledge of the terrain and where the animals are going in that terrain and when they're going there.
And I don't have that.
And then you've got to have roping skills, and you've got to have riding skills, and you've got to learn to put your spurs on right.
Yeah, I don't have spurs.
Well, we got to get you a set of spurs then.
Well, I guess growing up listening to country music's not enough.
It likes a little.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot, but a little.
I've been taking notes on the road trip, right? So we went from Du Bois, Wyoming, stayed the night there, had a grizzly bear. I guess the folks had a grizzly bear across the street the night before.
Bear and 2 cubs.
Yep. Well, then we went over to Jackson Hole, saw some bison, and we run up to Tetons, the Grand Tetons, and then over to Yellowstone, and then stay the night in Cody, Wyoming. We come back into Yellowstone and go back to Cody, and then over to Buffalo, and then we finish in Spearfish, South Dakota. We've done almost 1,700 miles over the last 7 days.
It's been great. But back up just a second minute.
Sure.
Remember, at that grizzly sighting, we also have a black bear that ran across the hill.
Well, so the grizzly bear that I was talking about was Lava Mountain. When they told us there had been a grizzly bear the day before or the week before right across the street. But yes, in Yellowstone, we saw the grizzly. Then we saw a black bear. We saw the grizzly and 2 cubs.
Yeah.
A black bear. Tons and tons of bison.
Oh, yeah.
No moose.
No moose.
No moose.
No elk.
Can we talk about that for a second? Did we already talk about the moose and the meese and the goose and the geese? We already had that conversation.
Absolutely. We was debating amongst ourselves, what do you call more than one moose? And we finally decided we'd call him a meese. I call him a meese. I don't think that's right. I think there's that's singular and plural at the same time.
It might be.
A herd of moose.
It might be.
Well, it's quite confusing because, if you see a goose, it is a goose. But if there's more than one, it's geese. So goose, moose, geese, meese, what's the difference?
Tomato, potato, passata.
There you go.
Right?
Right, absolutely.
So this, Pappy, you got a mountain named after you now.
Yeah, I'm one of the few people that I know in none of my home that's got a mountain named after him called Mount Pappy.
Over
That
there.
is absolutely a thrill to me. It's a compliment, and I love it.
It's located just outside was it Cowboy Bill or something, State Park or
Just outside of this, not far from Cody, Wyoming.
Yeah.
Going back towards Yellowstone. And it's interesting. I loved it. I'm glad you thought of that. I appreciate it.
I think Captain might have thought of that one.
I know. It's one of you whoever come up with it.
So listen, we're driving. Here's the thing that's interesting to me. You're driving almost in between each town into the nowhere. There's nowhere around you. It's like if you break down, you don't have signal. There's zero signal. right? I'm not used to that. Like in Florida on the East Coast, really, you every mile on the interstate, you got a phone that you could call for emergency, or you typically have cell phone service. Out here, you can go for 100 miles and have a little airplane signal at the top of your phone with no service. I can't drive a clunker through here. You got to have a car you know is going to get you from point A to point B. I thought that was pretty interesting.
One thing that's different in this part of the country, if you're out there stopped, it's very rare for anybody to come by and not stop and see about you and offer to help you. So there is a way out of this thing, but you have to wait. May have to wait a while. There may not be anybody come by for hours, but they normally will stop. Are you having problems? How can I help?
I thought it was interesting you say that, because when we went to the that wildlife refuge in Cody, was it Cody or Buffalo? No, it was Buffalo, and we were pulled over because there were some deer and antelope, but correctly known as pronghorn.
Pronghorn, yeah.
Pronghorn. Someone actually stopped. You weren't there because we dropped you off. You were looking at the deer, but we were up on the side of the road. I had the door open, and a guy actually stopped by and said, "Hey, you guys need help." So there you go. I guess I'm not used to that. Down in Florida, when someone does that, it's because they think you're being a nosy neighbor, and what's your problem? So I didn't expect. I guess he was just trying to be helpful.
Exactly.
I gave him the stink eye.
Well, these people out here live this life. They know what it is to break down.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And they don't know you from Adam.
We did this on a budget, right? We stayed these different places. In Cody, we stayed in someone's home. It was a great home to stay in. But in Buffalo, we stayed in a Roadway Inn. And that was interesting. It was a couple, a husband and wife from Georgia, who owned the place and run the campground behind them. Mm-hmm. And he said that the season of hunting, when that hunting season's over, for everybody to go home, the hunters that come in to hunt the elk and whatnot, the whole mountain becomes his, because everybody goes home and there's nobody in town, and he can go in the mountain for days and he can hunt and whatever he wants to hunt. And he loved that. For me, I don't know. I guess I got to be around some folks. Well, it wasn't my thing. So what's up with 10 Sleep? Remember we went through 10 Sleep?
That was kind of a cool town.
Yeah, how'd that get its name?
What I was told several years ago, how 10 Sleep got its name, that the Native Americans, which most of us call Indians, named it that because it was 10 sleeps, that many days across the mountains from Buffalo. That's what I've always heard.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This trip has been just absolutely grand for one particular reason to me. The knowledge that this guy's got of this area. I mean, he has really studied it and knows it well, and knows what's happened in the past, the history of it. And it's been a blessing to me to just sit back and listen to him talk about it.
It's an untouched area of America in a way. And you remember a lot of stuff that, we were like, oh, this is around the corner over here. And sure enough, it was there.
Well, I tell people that I'm a student of history. And one of the reasons being I'm old enough that I've lived a lot of it.
You like the Western stuff? I
love the Western stuff. I love it all. I've also have always been a student, for a better lack of wording, of what happened in the east part of the country, what happened in my own family, and it's been very interesting. A very good trip. This is my 13th trip to come to this part of the country. I was fortunate enough to get to come 12 times on hunting trips, and had a lot of success. Some, just like everywhere else, some you don't do very well. And I've got to where anymore I don't pursue it like I once did, but it's been a good run.
We're on a ranch right now, just north of Spearfish. Beautiful out here. It's like this all the way along the Wyoming. We're in South Dakota now, but when we made that trip east from the western part of Wyoming to the eastern part, the terrain changes so much. It could be desert-like rock in one place, even though I realized, I guess a desert doesn't have as much vegetation, of course, but it was still rock. And then you go through just hills, big, huge hills of brown grass. I'm not sure what you're going to call the grass. Then you could have rocks with some trees, but 50, 75 miles straight of just nothing, and then come into an area, and we're actually the area, the cameras may be able to see the Black Hills of South Dakota. Absolutely stunning and beautiful. In Buffalo, we went into a museum there, right?
Right.
And that was a
Jim Catchett Museum. He was a pharmacist that came to Buffalo in the later part of the 1800s, early 1900s, and opened up a drugstore. And he got to be friends with a lot of the Native Americans that were still alive. They'd been through a lot of the wars and the fights. And a lot of that things that's in his museum, I remember him, was traded to him or given to him as gifts from the people that done this and that out there at the wars. They even brought him a lot of relics off the Custer battlefield. In exchange, he gave him medicine.
says a lot about him as a person.
It does.
Especially when you think about what the Native Americans or the indigenous people, whatever you want to call, went through, right?
Well, they surely endured it, didn't they?
Right.
Yes,
and then
absolutely.
and then to essentially find if I can use a white man became a friend to them
He did.
because they trusted him.
And if you read in there the caption under his picture, he was in World War I, but it ended before he ever got shipped out. And he spent the rest of his life in the Guard, the National Guard, and different things, helping other people. It speaks very well for his life.
Absolutely. So, Randy, you got this. I know what it is now. Tatanka.
Tatanka.
That means what? Bison, buffalo.
Yes. Buffalo.
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 Buffalo. I've been known to add some syllables. You know, I've been doing this cowboy training now for 7 days, so I thought I made some progress.
Well, you have. You've made great progress.
This we've seen a bunch of bison out here.
Thousands.
Yeah, there are a lot of them.
And that's a good thing.
It is.
They have come back.
We didn't get the moose. We didn't get the grizzly. We saw one grizzly. It was in the distance, so in a cub.
Yeah.
But we'll take it. And then
certainly.
and today, final day, what a treat. Today we saw what?
We saw 3 bighorn sheep and approximately 14 goats, wild mountain goats.
Beautiful.
Mountain goats.
Awesome. There's people that go to Alaska to hunt those two species, pay thousands of dollars, and never see them. It was when Pappy said, "Look, there's mountain goats." I said the first thing that came to my mind was, "What is he looking at?" You know, there's no way there's mountain goats, and then there they were. I'm just totally taken aback by that. And then the goats, you know.
Both species are 2 of the most elusive are on the North American continent, and probably as much so as any in the world. They might be some that's wilder. A white-tailed deer, and especially a mature buck, is very wild, but no more than them. And one thing makes it, getting to see them so unique is where they live. They live in the high mountains and steep places that a human can't walk on.
Yeah, way above timberline.
Yeah. So it was a thrill. That's one of the greatest thrills I've had in many years to see what we did today.
So let's rewind to the Yellowstone. In that park, what was your favorite thing that you got to see? And had you been there before?
Never been to Yellowstone
okay.
before in my life. I liked seeing the lakes. I did, like all other tourists, enjoy seeing Old Faithful, and we happened to be there when it blowed. I also enjoyed probably one of the more things that I enjoyed was several more geysers that we saw in another place, and that was hot. There was hot water boiling out of them, blowing. It was just a treat to see all that. It's something different.
Yeah, the geysers.
Yes, I've never seen them before.
Well, one was called Dragon's Mouth or something,
Yeah,
and,
something like that.
and the water's being pushed out of it like a wave.
Come out of a wave like you was looking at the ocean. It's hot. You wouldn't want to get in that.
No.
But that was a treat, but for the simple reason it's something I'd never seen before.
Sure. What about you?
Hard for me to say, Ben. It's like every time you went around a curve, it's like turning the page in a book.
Yeah.
You know, or planing wood. You know, I'm a woodworker. And it's a whole new story. Every curve you'd go around. You think you've seen the most magnificent thing in the world, and the next thing you know, you've forgotten all about that one. Look at this. This is just magnificent. And that goes on all day long. All day long we experience that on this whole trip. It's been marvelous.
When we saw the Grand Tetons, my brother had gone out to Switzerland to see the Swiss Alps, and I'd seen pictures of that. And so when we came around the corner, we see the Tetons. after we left Du Bois, I was just in awe. And so I saw the Tetons.
Yeah.
And then you're right. You get into the park and you're surrounded by, I want to say, very tall spruce trees of some sort for several miles. I don't know, 25 miles, maybe 15. And you then have this giant canyon down the right side. This is coming up the south entrance of Yellowstone. And then you go around the lake. And that was what we did the first day. Saw some just steaming, geyser-like things by the lake. It's like just unheard of. It's, I remember being a kid and I watched Land Before Time and they had those in that movie. I've never seen stuff like this. I know folks say, well, you didn't watch, Animal Planet or National Geographic. You've never, until you come out here and you actually see it, you can't appreciate it. You can see it on a camera and it can be in the wilderness. To actually go there and stand there and watch this thing happening. One of them reminded me of a ride at a theme park, the Dragon's Mouth, the way it was making this noise and just bubbling under the earth like it was about to explode was just incredible. And then Artist Point, that huge canyon with that waterfall that drops down, just remarkable. It was cool.
Yes, it was.
The one thing that I saw there that I would never believed and didn't understand that it ever existed, we saw 5 geysers up on a ridge. I thought they was always in low places, a swampy place maybe. But these was high on a ridge. You could see them from the highway. And they was blowing and the steam was blowing. That was interesting, along with the dragon's mouth or whatever it was. I can't remember now. That was probably the most.
Witch's Cauldron or something was another one.
Yeah,
and
Of course, Old Faithful is the most famous one of them all. And it was very inspiring to see that thing blow. It blew the water and hot water real high in there and lasted for several minutes. So it was interesting.
What about Yellowstone Lake? Do you remember how many miles of coastline? What was it?
163, I believe it was.
Gross
miles.
Okay. I remember 131, 132, but you may be right.
Maybe.
But to hear over 100 miles of coastline for that lake is incredible. I felt like we were driving around that lake forever.
And again, in every curve you go around, there'd be a new canyon cropping out there.
There's Fisherman's Bridge. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
That to me looked like, for me, it was like looking out over some of those. I don't want to call them intercoastal waterways, but some of those eastern Georgia, even off the Jacksonville areas where the sawgrass is coming up. Something you'd see in Savannah or Charleston, South Carolina, with the sawgrass and the golden sun across hitting trees in the background. It's so different. You can have a piece of landscape where it's just some rocks with some sage grass or some shrubs, and then you can have those same rocks with huge trees growing out of them, or rocks that are vertically straight up and have no clue how they got that way or why they're still like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Some of the rock formations. We saw one today. Pappy and I were remarking about it.
Custer.
It looked like it was about 25 feet in diameter. 200 feet tall, just a rock cropping.
Yeah.
Like it grew out of the earth. And a huge lodgepole pine sitting 10 feet away from it. It's just, the rock formations have just been incredible. Absolutely incredible.
This whole trip has been as educational as anything I've ever done in my life. I know I have some knowledge of most of what we've seen and some not. Seen things that I didn't even know existed. And it's been a real interesting trip, and we've had a good time together.
Yeah, we sure have. Let's talk about Wild Bill. So Deadwood's the last place we've been to, right? It's where we've been the last. This will be the second night, and it's about this Wild Bill guy. And so Deadwood is actually like this series of, well, number one, it's a town. Okay, it's a city here in South Dakota, and it's a big tourist attraction now, and it's about Wild Bill and what's that girl's name? Calamity something?
Calamity Jane.
Calamity Jane. And they have like this whole movie on it and history of it, which is really cool. That's a popular thing. That's a more modern deal. It's not like an old Western, trying to, History Channel thing. This is, I think, an HBO series, and it's very, very popular. But there's some cool stuff there about Wild Bill that are. So I went to lunch yesterday in downtown, and I always find it important to try to get local knowledge, right? Try and find someone who's been around and try to find some information. And so the waitress says, I don't know, I think she just offered it. And she's like, yeah, Wild Bill's not really buried in the cemetery, which I shared that with some folks today when we were up at the cemetery, and they didn't like that too much because that hurt their feelings because they thought Wild Bill was there. And maybe he really is, but she says that Wild Bill is actually under some houses just down from the cemetery because I guess they built houses over cemeteries, which I could never live in a house like that. But what do you know about Wild Bill?
Well, Wild Bill was well noted. He done a lot of different jobs in his life. He was a U.S. Marshal, I think, at one time, or at least a town sheriff. I'm not sure. He was a hunter, and mostly what he did was he was a gambler. He was a poker player. And that's how he wound up when he got killed. He had a habit and a belief that he'd never sat with his back to the door, and that day the chairs were all full, and if he's going to play poker at that table, he had to sit down that way. And the guy walked up at Jack McCall and shot him in the back of the head. And they never did know why.
And that was that.
He made all kinds of tales about it and excuses, and the interesting thing is the courts, coroner's jury, whatever they had there, turned the guy loose. But they got him in another place in South Dakota, and it was the end of the line for him.
Took care of him? They took care of him? They killed him? Hung him?
They found him guilty of murder and hung him.
So
Yankton, South Dakota.
So Wild Bill is not the same as Cody, right?
No. Buffalo Bill was William Cody.
So there's Buffalo Bill, and then there's Wild Bill, and they're two separate people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And Buffalo Bill, they named Buffalo, Wyoming after him?
No.
Okay.
The town that's named after Buffalo Bill, Cody, is Cody, Wyoming.
Okay.
And we had dinner one night, and I got to finally get a drink on the famous bar that was given to Buffalo Bill by Queen Victoria when he was in England one time with his Wild West show. So he was a Pony Express rider first as a teenage boy. He was a hunter. How he got the name Buffalo Bill. He killed a lot for the Army. He killed a lot of buffalo. And then in later years, he became a kind of a celebrity. He had this touring Wild West show. He had some Native Americans, a lot of actual cowboys. They had cattle. They do all these things in the arena. It's kind of like a processor.
I think Calamity Jane was part of that too, wasn't she?
At times, I think. I'm not sure about her.
Yeah, didn't she shoot a long gun or something in the show?
Maybe. I think that Annie Oakley was in it for a while one time.
So
I may be confused about those two.
Okay.
No, I'm not sure now. I'm not sure about that. I don't know a whole lot of the personal history of her name is Mary something, but we looked at it today on her monument up there. But she's buried beside a Wild Bill Hickok, and supposedly her last words was, when she was dying, bury me beside a Wild Bill, and they did.
I'm looking up. It says in 1873 that Buffalo Bill Cody asked his friend Wild Bill Hickok to join his combination for the staging of a play. So these guys knew each other.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
So back to Deadwood for a second. So Deadwood was like, what I researched a little bit or read and learned was this unorganized town that didn't really have any jurisdiction or any laws or anything. So things sort of ran wild. There was this big gold rush in Deadwood that kind of brought people here. Some gold was found, and they just came in droves. But I asked you guys earlier about this lady, Calamity Jane. Mm-hmm. And the reason I asked you is because there was a picture on the wall at the restaurant we were in. And I said, who's that?
Yeah.
And I said, was she, an outlaw? And you kind of said she was everything.
She was a little of everything at one time. And one thing she was a teamster. She drove, they had no other way of transporting goods, groceries, anything from town to town. And they had, they called them teamsters that drove those wagons with probably 6, 8, 10 horses pulling them, or even oxen. And she did that. She did a lot of things. She's pretty well known in the West in the old days.
I thought that was interesting. You said I think y'all were teaching me about oxen and horses.
Yes.
I thought horses pulled the wagon.
No, oxen are stronger, more stamina, and actually easier to control.
Are you guys surprised by how much knowledge I'm sharing right now? That I can now maybe become a cowboy?
Well, you still got some work to do yet, but you're starting in the right direction.
I listen to country music. That helps.
Well, that's debatable.
You got to learn how to rope and ride.
Oh, yeah. Who's that? 6-shooter. Is that Toby Keith?
Yeah.
Toby Keith. Yeah, this trip's been a blast. So here on the final day, I don't know if you know this or not, I'm a big rock person. I like collecting rocks, and we stopped by this place. Now, this thing right here, I'm going to clean it up a little bit because it was just a little dirt on it. This is rose quartz. And I didn't realize that South Dakota, in particular the Black Hills, are one of the top 5 destinations in all of America to look for gems, different minerals.
Oh, I did not.
And this thing here was like $6. I'm sure there's people who like get it for free, but I didn't know where to find it, and this is awesome. So thought that was really cool. We picked up I got some Utah agate, maybe it was called, or something. It was a green rock. Got that for pretty cheap too. Taking that home with me. I don't know why that's funny. This means a lot to me.
No, I'm smiling. I'm agreeing with you. I love to see anybody enjoy anything. I really do.
Speaking about enjoying, Pappy, when we got into those animals, did you see the excitement in this young guy?
Oh,
which animals you talking about?
He did that the other night when we seen all those deer.
All of them. It's incredible.
Well, I like them. And I make sure the microphone's pointing toward your mouth.
Okay.
You can just turn it. You can bring it to push it. Yeah, right there. Perfect.
That better?
Well, so today, number one, the bison are cool. I really want, if I had to do it again, so that's what I want to talk about for a moment. If I had to do this trip again, I would work to spend. So the thing that's difficult is when you're in Yellowstone, it's all day because it takes you an hour to get to where you're going, at least. You're not driving fast. And then when you're there, you're going to pass it if you don't sit and watch. So I would like to go to that Hayden Valley and or Lamar Valley, which are 2 big areas. See, the guy that was in Cody, the place we stayed at, gave us some knowledge. He said, look, he felt like the southern part of Yellowstone, even the eastern part coming out to Cody, were so-so. He said, you really need to go up to the northeast side of the valleys. That's where you're going to see wildlife. And the lady said, what you call it, the Serengeti, of North America.
Yeah.
And Lamar Valley is just this huge valley that goes on. I don't know how many miles it goes on for. And you're up top. And what's interesting is a lot of places where you do wildlife viewing, at least on the eastern part of the United States that I've seen, it's sort of drive by, take the picture, and move on. There, people camped out sort of on the side of the road, not literally camped, but are parked on the side of the road. They're sitting in chairs, they're doing picnics because they're watching an entire scene sort of unfold. And the one they were watching was a coyote that was stalking a few pronghorns down in the valley, and they were just trying to watch the entire thing unfold, which was really cool. But I know you guys didn't care for people getting too close to those bison.
Well, they're a wild animal, A. B, they're fast, very fast. They can run 35 miles an hour.
People see them just laying there and feel like they can walk right up to them and get a picture.
And see, they've got a cantankerous personality. You don't never know what they're going to do.
You had one charge you or something?
I had one to charge me out in Missouri on a game preserve. I took my brother out there who was no longer able to hunt and let him hunt a little. That's how come I was on that. I don't personally like to do that. And I was walking out the road, and there was a herd of them down in the creek bottom, and I saw a big yearling bull break. He broke out from the crowd, and here he come. He came across the creek, up a bank, and was starting to the road where I was walking. And it finally dawned on me, he's after me. And now what do? I went up the bank on the other side. And when I did that, he turned and went back. Apparently got too close to him. But they are dangerous. They don't have to pay any attention at all to fighting with a bear. A bear's got very little, even a grizz has got very little chance against them. They're so big and they're strong, and they can, like Randy just said, they can move. They can run a horse down for a short distance. Now, they don't run very far.
I was reading a story recently where in Yellowstone, a guy tried to save and did a baby buffalo that was drowning in the water. And they ended up, let me think about this. His pride, I don't know if you call it a herd, had left him. They abandoned it. The herd abandoned the calf, and so the calf was in the water drowning, and he saved it. I want to say, though, the calf somehow died later. Either they euthanized it or did something. But they were kind of like, oh, you're a hero, but at the same time condemned him. Like, that's nature, and you shouldn't go try to in the middle of what's happening in Yellowstone. Yellowstone is this vast it's unlike anything in the world I've ever seen in terms of a park. This is not drive in, do a loop in 15 minutes. This is an entire park that we spent hours upon hours driving through, hours in, that is just absolutely phenomenal, and a place I'll definitely go back, at some point. Jackson Hole was cool.
Everything about the West, on the western half of our great nation, is vast and wide open. And remember what they told us down at Jackson Hole, that's the location of the National Elk Refuge. They've got a big piece of property fenced off where the elk come down out of the mountains in the winter when the snow gets that bad, and they actually feed them there to keep them going. And if I remember right, I was surprised at this, but there was 24,000 acres in that thing.
Yeah.
And I think all of it's under high fence. And it's absolutely fascinating to me. I've always kind of watched, and there's a lot of the animals that we've now got in this country, even with a greater population of people than we had, that was on the verge of extinction a few years ago. And the elk was one of them. And going back further than that was what we call the buffalo, the bison. There was very few of them left. They didn't really know that there was any left. And there's a big valley in North Texas. I can't remember the name of it. And they happened to find a herd of them in that had went there for refuge. And that's from there they brought the bison back. And now there's, I don't know how many million of them. And that's wonderful. And we've seen a lot of them this week.
We sure have. And that's some more of that knowledge that this man has to share with us, Ben.
Is it called Big Valley?
No, I just don't know the name. I can't remember it.
No,
I didn't know it.
A ton of knowledge. Nonstop, pointing stuff out. There was this, there's this.
There was an old, tough cowboy named Charles Goodnight. And he had one of the trails north, him and his partner, the Goodnight Trail, and I forget what the other guy's name was. But he went there and started a ranch in that valley. And he's one that spotted, I reckon, discovered there's a small herd of bison there in the valley living there. And from there, they started bringing them back. Now, there could have been others around, scattered in very small numbers.
Sure.
But that was one of the biggest things, discoveries to get them started back and recovered as a population and a species. And that's absolutely wonderful.
We've covered, and we'll have covered almost, I want to say 2,500 miles when it's all said and done and we get to Denver. Not everybody's going to be able to do what we've done. We've stayed on the go every single day, driving, seeing, not sleeping a little bit, waking up 6 a.m. on the road. If somebody's coming out to the West, never been, this is my first time, what would you recommend they do? It's not, I don't think it's feasible for most people to do a Jackson to Cody to Buffalo to, Spearfish and or Deadwood.
Come spend a week in Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah. And camp. Or get a lodge, which are expensive. They're not cheap. They're $300 to $500 a night.
Or where we were today.
Custer.
I would
Custer State
recommend kind of what we used to do when we was coming out here to hunt. We would stop and see what we could of things that we thought was Western, starting in southern South Dakota. Then we go on into Wyoming. I would recommend it. There are a lot of places in Colorado. Colorado, I used to think one of the prettiest places I ever been. And there's so many attractions that most people in the East have never seen. And so there's a lot to see. I would say do your research and pick out what you think would be the most interesting to you.
And be ready to run into people you might know.
Yeah.
Like we did in Cody.
Wasn't that? That was funny.
Small world, isn't it?
Yes.
Walking down the street and see people that you've grown up with in the last 20, 30 years. And that's Brenda and Randy Joyner.
Yeah.
And then as far as you go, when we were coming across Yellowstone Lake on Saturday, right? Uh-huh. You remember the couple that had the Tennessee tag from Granger County?
Yes, my neighbors.
2 miles
And
from
you don't even know the people.
No, I
They live 2 miles away from your house in East Tennessee. That's incredible.
Never seen before.
Small world.
I live on close to one of the Tennessee Valley Authority reservoirs, where they built dams called Cherokee Lake, and that lake is such an attraction. It's got I don't know how many marinas on it, and there's people moving in there all the time, and I don't know a lot of them anymore. When I was a boy growing up, I knew about everybody that lived within a few miles of me, but it's like everywhere else now.
So let me ask you a question. If you're a betting man, we're near Deadwood, and there's 27 casinos there, so be a betting man tonight. What would you say, how many vehicles with a Granger tag were in Yellowstone between Friday and Sunday of last week?
1 or 2, maybe. I had some other neighbors that I called to see about some business the other day, and they were in Yellowstone then, and I didn't know it. And I heard her name, his wife's Kay. I heard Kay speak up, said, well, "Is Granger County moving out here?" Not from 2 people, I don't think.
That park is so vast. The odds of running into somebody is just, I don't know. I'm not saying it's a coincidence, but I guess it is, but I don't know.
happenstance.
Yeah, happenstance. There you go.
A lot of people Americans are mobile, the ones that can afford it, that like to go on vacations and see things like us. And you don't know where you'd run into somebody that you knew. I have before, but not that far from home, and I didn't know them. But they lived about 2 miles or less from me.
Incredible.
Well, I'm glad that you gentlemen had your coffee in the morning because I know how important that was. We talked about that. Some people have to have it, Randy. They got to have it every morning. They got to have it as soon as they wake up, or it's a bad day.
Oh, you can't do without coffee. I don't see how you can make it without coffee.
Some can't. Some can't.
A good cup of coffee is hard to beat.
I had something in my notes here about coffee. It was Coffee Texas. What did it say? Cowboy coffee.
Cowboy coffee.
What's a cowboy coffee?
Cowboy coffee is simply you put the water in the pot, you put the grounds in the water, and you bring it to a boil. When it boils to the top, you take it off the heat, and you sprinkle cold water over the top of it. Just go around the spigot, and that will settle the grounds to the bottom of the pot. Set it back on the stove on simmer and just let it settle, and it's the best coffee there is.
Pappy, you ever had that?
Yes, they made it a little different ways, but essentially what it amounted to was, if you didn't have a coffee pot, you can make you some coffee in a pot, a cooking pot.
Yeah.
You boil the water and pour the coffee in it, or have the coffee and boil it all together and settle it down and drink it.
Yeah.
But it's important to have coffee no matter how it's made.
You can't function. All right. Well, thank y'all. This has been a fun trip.
I guess we need to really thank you, Pappy. I mean, this guy,
No.
he has chauffeured us all over the country.
I've thanked him. I've bragged on him.
I'll take another
I've
thank you.
supported everything he thought of. But he'll catch me every once in a while, kind of chuckle. He's laughing a little. What are you laughing at, Pappy? It's a little. I think he gets a little on edge, like I was laughing. Thought I was laughing at his rocks.
I did.
No, I'm not. I
'Cause
told you I had some things that I thought you'd like, and I'd probably give you.
I appreciate
Those
that.
relics.
Well, I was going to give him a few checks on the cowboy department, him becoming a cowboy.
Yeah.
But then a while ago in the podcast, he called it a coyote.
Oh, I said coyote instead of yote or coat or coyote.
All them attaboys, they're gone.
Yeah, they let you lose them that way.
They're gone.
You work hard to build up attaboys and lose them real quick.
Listen, you guys said that I could be a miner a lot quicker than I could be a cowboy.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've already started. I got my rock here.
That's why I said that.
All right. Thank y'all for an incredible trip. We got a little more tomorrow in Estes Park on the way home.
Yep.
And we'll see how that goes. But thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thanks,
Yeah.
man.
And thank you for all you done on our trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make us have a good time.
Happy 80th
Thank you,
birthday.
Pappy. This
Happy
is
birthday.
This is my new buddy.
He's a birthday boy. That's why we're here. 80.
yeah, that's
80.
right.
That's it. We didn't do this trip if it weren't for you.
I understand that, and I appreciate it that much more.
Thank you, Babby. Thank
Are
you.
we done?
We're done.